Good morning. And welcome to the Keene Unitarian Universalist Church, or KUUC, as many of us call it. We are proud to be a green sanctuary and welcoming congregation. I'm Jen Wyman, and I have been a member or friend of this church since 2014. Over the years, I've been involved in the choir, the music committee. I served 2 terms as chair of the worship committee, done a few odd things here and there. I've worn many hats, as I always say. If you are new to this church, you are especially welcome. We hope that you will stay after the service and join us for coffee and conversation right across the way in the parish hall. If this is your first time at KUUC, please sign the guest book or fill out a card on the membership table or the pew rack in front of you, so that we can get to know you better. If you don't know much about Unitarian Universalism, or what a green sanctuary is, or a welcoming congregation for that matter, that's all right. Many of us didn't know anything about Unitarian Universalism before we entered these doors for the first time. To help us out, each week we designate one person to serve as a point of contact to newcomers. Today, that ambassador is Carol White. Please stand up, Carol. Now is the perfect time to turn off your phones or other noisemakers so that you might be fully present. May you find something here that brings you comfort, yet challenges you to be your best self. Let us now enter into this hour of worship.
Our opening words come to us this morning from an adaptation from Edward Searle. Always there is a beginning, a new day, a new month, a new season, a new year. Forever the old passes away, and newness emerges from the richness that was. Nothing is ever lost in the many changes time brings. What was, in some way, will be, though changed in form. Always there is a beginning, a new day, a new month, a new season, a new year. At this time, I'd like to invite forward Carol and Bob Hill, who will do our chalice lighting this morning. You can find the chalice lighting words in your order of service. We kindle this flame to remind ourselves of the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of commitment. Rise in body or in spirit to join in singing our first hymn, hymn number 1 in the gray hymnal, May Nothing Evil Cross the Store.
Good morning. So, I did sort of rewrite this story a little bit with the help of ChatGPT again. So I have to state that, I think, legally. So that has been said. In a small village surrounded by mountains, there lived a woman named Delilah. Lila was known for her joyful spirit and her way of finding beauty in the simplest of things: a blooming flower, the sound of a bird song, or the warmth of the sun on her face. But one year, a great storm swept through the region. It tore down homes, ruined crops, and left the village struggling to recover. Lila's home was spared, but her heart was heavy. Her family's fields, once full of golden wheat, lay barren, and the laughter that used to echo through the village seemed to have disappeared. One day, as Lila sat beneath a tree, she sighed and whispered, "I wish I could feel whole again." An old traveler overheard her and approached. "I see that you are troubled." I lost my spot. "I see that you are troubled," the traveler said gently. "What burdens your heart?" Lila explained, "I feel lost. The storm has taken so much, and I don't know how to move forward." The traveler nodded with understanding. "There is a way to find peace again," they said. "Bring me a mustard seed from the home that has never known sorrow. With it, I will show you the path to healing." Encouraged, Lila set out through the village, knocking on doors and asking, "Have you known sorrow? If not, may I have a mustard seed from your home?" At the first house, an elderly couple invited her in. "We wish we could help," they said, "but our family has faced hard times. There was a drought many years ago, and we lost all of our crops. It was a painful season, but it taught us the value of working together as a community." Lila stayed and listened, comforted by their resilience. At the next house, a young mother answered, "Our home has known sorrow," she admitted. "Last winter, my child fell ill. The whole village came together and helped us, and we have never forgotten their kindness." As Lila visited house after house, she heard stories of struggle, but also of courage, love, and hope. A carpenter spoke of rebuilding homes after a storm. A teacher shared how her students had planted a garden to bring beauty back to the village. A group of children talked about finding ways to make each other laugh, even on the hardest of days. By the time Lila returned to the traveler, her hands were empty, but her heart was full. I need a bigger print. I couldn't find a single mustard seed, but I learned something even more important. Every home has known sorrow, but every home has also holds a story of healing, kindness, and connection. I am not alone. The traveler smiled and said, "This is the lesson of the mustard seed. No one escapes life's challenges, but through sharing our burdens and our joys, we find the strength to carry on. The seeds of peace and healing are sown not in isolation, but in the soil of community." From that day on, Lila became a source of light for her village. She encouraged others to share their stories, knowing that by doing so, they could help each other heal. The village, once weighed down by the storm, began to bloom again, not just in the fields, but in their hearts. Can we sing the children out, please?
In our community, we make time to share pieces of our lives with one another. We do this because each person in this community has value. Each person's experience matters. We take this sacred time to reflect on our joys and sorrows and acknowledge the mutual support of our community. If you would like, you may come forward and release a stone in the water in silence, or with a brief verbal expression of a special joy or sorrow. If you would like to share this morning, please line up on either side of the sanctuary and come forward one at a time. If it is a challenge for you to come forward, please raise your hand and we will bring the microphone to you.
First-time caller. I have a joy, and his name is John Cronin, who's a member of our church, and he does a lot around here without getting a lot of credit sometimes, but he, just lately, we finished the wall up downstairs, so I'm going to name that wall the John Cronin Great Wall downstairs here at the church. But he's a sweetheart guy. He comes to my house to carry the real heavy equipment up from the basement, and then he follows me back home to take it back down in my basement because my knee's not good. But way to go, John. Thank you.
My name is Carl Jacobs, and my joy is that as of January 1st, I had 19 years of sobriety. And I am just eternally grateful to this congregation, which has been a big part of finding the joy in living a sober life.
Hi, my name is Gwen, and I am going to share a joy with you that this is the first year that we've had Remy at Christmas and at New Year's, and she just brought so much joy, and I finally stayed up to watch the ball drop, and neither of the dogs were in the room, but I swear as soon as they were like, 3, 2, 1, the dogs thought it was for them, and they just came running in the room, so we all celebrated 2025 together.
Hi, I'm Deborah Zagajewski, and I have two joys. One is a joy sorrow. One joy is I heard from Barbara Meikle just yesterday via email, but she's feeling much better and she's due to be back in her own home at Covenant Living next Wednesday. I'm sure she'd love any phone calls, cards, whatever. So that's for Barbara. And a sorrow, but a great joy, thinking of President Jimmy Carter. Such a model for a humanitarian who was a president of this country. I can only hope that some of that transfers into all coming administrations.
I'm Emma Stamis, and my husband and I moved to Covenant Living about over the summer. And one of the people that we met that also goes to the church is Barbara Meikle. And I wanted to report that she's really doing well, but she is going to stay in the assisted living and be not exposed to any germs and colds and flus and so forth. And also just to make sure that she's fully recovered. And so you won't be seeing her for a couple of more weeks still. But I wanted to tell you that, and also just to thank people for being so welcoming to my husband and I. We had been living in Greenfield and going to All Souls in Greenfield, Massachusetts for a while. And it's been really nice coming up here and meeting new people.
Is there anyone who would like the microphone brought to them? Oh, I'm sorry, Susie.
Hi, I'm Susie Erickson West, and with the holiday season, I've had many wonderful joys, including one of my sons and his fiancee coming for a visit with my grandpuppy. But the other joy that I have that I want to voice has been how wonderful this season of our church has been since the start of the church year. I think there was a lot of anxiety over moving forward without a full-time minister, and I think that in every service that I have been at, I have gotten something remarkable and wonderful, and I am so thankful and grateful and awed by the wealth of talent and wisdom that we have in our own congregation to be able to help move us forward. So I thank you all.
I'm Rebecca. I told some of you on Christmas Eve that our granddaughter was very, very ill in the hospital, 11-month-old. She'd had flu for a week and then was in the hospital for 5 more days. Barely escaped going to intensive care. So the joy is that she's better. Her family is recovered, and the little boy, the 4-year-old, managed to be brave and wait days and days for Santa to come until his sister came home. And yeah, and the last picture I had of Ani was sitting in a pizza place with her mom and brother, smeared with pizza and grinning ear to ear. So she's fine now. Thank you.
Okay, now I will ask if there's anyone who needs the microphone brought to them. Okay, so I will now place a stone in the water for those joys and concerns that have been left unspoken.
Our sung response is in your order of service. There is a love. We'll sing it twice through. Once the first time with the me and I language, and the second time with us and we. Now is the time in our service where we offer up our financial support for the good works of this congregation. Please give generously as you are able to support. Please join me in the offering dedication words printed in your order of service. We dedicate these gifts in service of our mission to actively create compassionate community and work for a fair and peaceful world. When I was in my 20s, my college friend Kelsey and I decided to visit a friend of ours who is volunteering in the Amazon jungle. She and her friends one friend, were building biogas digesters. These are composting bins that they could capture the gas to use as electricity in very remote places. It was at a research station that they were working, and it was several hours down the Amazon River, from Iquitos, which is the largest city in the world that's inaccessible by road. You can only get there by plane or by boat. As you can imagine, this week-long trip was full of adventures. There were houses built on stilts in the Amazon, so as the waters would rise and fall, the houses wouldn't be impacted by the water level. There were also floating houses that could also go up and down with the water, and people would take their little kind of canoe-like boats to get from the shore out to these houses. We went swimming in the river and also saw piranhas for sale at the market. We slept in these on cots inside of a tent, and the tent was inside of this building that was just screens to protect us from the insects that would potentially come in. It was probably the most remote place that I've ever been. When we came back, I was living in Washington, D.C. at the time, and as was Kelsey. And when we got back, we eagerly told stories about our trip to our friends. And something you might not know yet about me is that I really like precise language. I take things very literally, and I want to understand exactly how things work. So in telling stories, I also like to be as accurate as possible, and I don't want to miss a detail, like the size of the tarantula, or that we had to pick up rubber boots in order to avoid getting snake bites as we walked through the jungle, even though we never saw any snakes. The thing about Kelsey is that she loves a good story. And she gets the spirit of the story accurate, though she doesn't exactly stick to the literal details about what happens. So we got back and we were telling our friends about this trip. And Kelsey would start a story and explain what we were doing and what had happened. And about halfway through, I would interrupt and clarify what had really happened. Our friends would roll their eyes at this dynamic that, exemplifies Kelsey and my relationship. The story that Mallory told was adapted from one of the most famous stories in Buddhism about a woman, Kisa Gotami, and her encounter with the Buddha. I have come to appreciate that my version of the truth isn't the only one that matters. The stories that we tell ourselves sometimes limit our perspectives. Sometimes the search for the mustard seed brings us closer to relieving our sorrow than actually ever finding that mustard seed. I don't think that finding that mustard seed would have relieved that person's sorrow. My version of the stories contain a piece of the truth, but not the whole truth of our experiences. We need community to share our stories and to hear one another's stories. And when we share our stories, we experience community, witnessing, connection, and belonging. And that is part of why we bring our joys and sorrows in worship the first Sunday of each month. And it is also why many people join smaller committees and groups within this congregation. When I first got here in the fall, I asked a lot of people what they were looking for when they first came here or why they had stayed. And so many people talked about this feeling like family. And for most people, for something to feel like family, that's something that takes time. In social psychology, there's a theory called the proximity effect. And it states that when people spend more time with one another in close spaces, proximate to one another, they are more likely to form a bond and to find affinity with one another. In other words, simply showing up and seeing one another increases our fondness for each other. I know that's true for people that I regularly see at the grocery stores that I frequent. Even if I don't know their names, some of them I kind of look forward to seeing at the grocery store. And in the most extreme cases, I've spent time with people that I didn't think that I really liked, only to discover over an extended period of time that I could find an appreciation for them. I've been reading a book recently called The Amen Effect, Ancient Wisdom to Mend Our Broken Hearts and World by Sharon Brous. I was reminded about our first principle of Unitarian Universalism, the respect for inherent worth and dignity of all people, when she wrote, "The ancient rabbis note that the first person, Adam, was created singly to teach us that had he been struck down, none of his descendants would ever have been born. A whole world lost. And conversely, saving Adam's life would have meant saving all of his descendants. And thus the rabbis conclude, anyone who destroys even one life, it is as if that person has destroyed an entire world. And anyone who saves a single life, it is as if that person has saved an entire world." This is also connected to the idea that all of us are made in the image of God coming from Genesis in the Hebrew Bible. Each night a child is born is a holy night, according to Unitarian religious educator Sophia Lyon-Faz. Each of us is made in the image of God. Even those around us who have never had kids or have descendants or raised descendants change the world themselves, and our legacies, their legacies, live on. These are powerful stories. And what might it look like if we believe them and act like they're true? Here's an excerpt from an essay called "The Power of Truth" by Mark Bellatini in the book Blessing the Imperfect. Marge and her husband Bill were longtime members of the second congregation I was fortunate to serve. Marge was articulate, thoughtful, and smart, and she never missed a service unless she was away, which was rare. She shared her forthright skepticism about some of the ideas about worship I brought to the table. "You're not going to read from the Bible, are you?" But never tried to get me to change my style. I always felt warm towards her because I rather favor direct, engaged people who don't complain so much as plainly state their point of view. Marge was not one to run for office, although she did end up sitting on the board once. She was not an orator. She spoke only for herself, and she often had a reserved presence. But this does not mean she was not a most excellent leader. When Jean, a student from Star King School, applied to serve as an intern at the congregation, the board hesitated. Jean was in a wheelchair. Our simple homespun buildings were mostly accessible, but the student, an excellent leader herself, simply suggested that in order for the buildings to be totally accessible, the door of one of the bathrooms had to be rehung to open in the other direction, and a very small ramp had to be built to let her chair negotiate the single step into the church office. "We don't have that money in our budget," opined one board member. "I don't know if we can deal with that," worried another. "And anyway, who has the ability around here to design and build a ramp?" But Marge simply said, "It seems to me if we mean what we say when we espouse our Unitarian Universalist principles of justice and equal access, then the simple solutions Jean just suggested might have best been accomplished 20 years ago. I think the ramp and the door need to be in place by Friday at the latest." And they were. And Jean interned with us most excellently. Note, Marge did not hammer a single nail, design the ramp, or even organize the work party. She just spoke the truth and let the truth do its work, addressing both our stated commitments and our dream for our future as a congregation. Leadership often requires patience and stamina, certainly, but the urgency of the dream was part of the truth that Marge expressed at that board meeting, and I am convinced she was right. Sometimes our stories tell us we cannot do things, that we do not have enough money, and that we need to live in scarcity. And as a result, we don't try, and those things just don't happen. And other times, it is the simple belief that something must happen that makes it so. The simple belief, by simple I don't mean easy. Being clear about our intention, our goal, our hope, our purpose, that is the first step for making things happen. And when we act with purpose and conviction that something must be done, we can make meaningful changes that have a real impact on lives. We need community. We need the voices within our group that remind us what our values are calling us to do. In the book, The Amen Effect, Erin, the mother of 2 young boys, fought a rapidly progressing cancer. In the final months of her life, she wrote achingly, "What is your soul calling you to do? What is the mission, the meaning only you can fulfill? Where have you hidden away your most profound desires and aspirations? And can you unearth them? Most importantly, how are you actively thwarting their accomplishment? We so assiduously sabotage the very thing that would bring us the most satisfaction. I can't now, I'm too busy, it won't work, I can't." As a congregation, we have a collective purpose, actively creating compassionate community and working for a fair and peaceful world. We show up for one another in times of joy and in times of sorrow, so that no one of us has to go it alone. We work together to make our larger community and world more just through the Community Breakfast Program, the Monadnock Interfaith Project, and through sharing our building with other organizations like the New Multicultural Center. And on a personal level, a sense of purpose is one of the most important stories that we can tell ourselves in our lives. Whatever you want to call it, your purpose, your vocation, your calling. Throughout our lives, we may have multiple different purposes, and sometimes even more than one at the same time. but to have a sense of meaning and direction can allow us to accomplish great things. We have entered a new calendar year. It's a time that many of us are reflective about who we are and what we hope for moving forward into the rest of the year. Let us pay attention to the stories that we tell in this new year. May we notice what excites us, the places that we find passion and longing, and especially the roles that we are uniquely situated to fulfill. May we notice what is getting in our way, the unintentional barriers and blocks, and the ways that we are preventing ourselves from living into our deeper purposes. And may we also listen to our sacred no's and pay attention to the things that we are not meant to do. May it be so. Please rise in body and/or spirit and join me in singing hymn 1008, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place. We will be extinguishing our chalice in a moment. Thank you, Carol and Bob, for coming forward. The extinguishing words are in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and share with the world until we are together again. Our benediction comes to us from Maureen Killeron. As the weather winds of change, as we weather winds of change, may we have wisdom to cherish moments of stillness. As we recollect times of challenge and of pain, may we also remember the graceful blessings of our lives. As we look to future unknowns, may we have the boldness to trust that there is an unimagined good yet to come. Amen.